What is freedom of speech? How free are you to say what you think? How free should you be? We hear a lot about freedom of speech these days, mainly from the far right, which, as you will see, is ironic in itself, but not just from the fash. We also hear about freedom of speech from libertarians, liberals, and neoliberals, even from the courts. We don't hear much about freedom of speech from the left wing as a rule, and we really ought to. Freedom of speech, or more accurately in this country, freedom of expression, is a fundamental right in any democratic state. But it doesn't mean what a lot of people seem to think it means. It doesn't mean we can say anything at all without consequence. It just means that for the most part, that consequence shouldn't be in the hands of the state. If we're not free to express ideas that other people might disagree with, then we're not free to develop. If we can't speak the truth as we see it, then we can't introduce new thoughts into society, and as a result, society will never progress. The state has no right to censor our opinions or to prohibit their expression. That's what happens in North Korea, where citizens are too frightened to speak out against the regime for fear of disappearance. The same is true and was true in Soviet Russia and in Germany under the Nazis. It was the case in Spain under Franco and Italy under Mussolini. We need freedom of expression, just as we need a free press and a free political landscape. What we don't need is hate speech. The state, here in UK, reserves the right to intervene when people misuse their right to freedom of expression to incite violence or promote discrimination against any particular group. That doesn't mean people can't say what's true, but it does mean that the ramifications of what they say and how they say it need to be taken into account. For example, it is true that in towns and cities like Rotherham and Oldham, there have been a number of Muslim men convicted of serial child sexual exploitation. There, I said it. And nobody is going to come knocking down my door to arrest me. It's not true that the entire Muslim community in those towns, let alone nationwide, is responsible for it. If I were to suggest that was true, I'd be guilty of hate speech and promoting discrimination. If I were to go on to suggest that because of my false assumption that all Muslims are involved, they should be deported or punished in some other way, I'd be inciting hate crime. Do you see what happened there? I made a true statement that Muslim men in various British towns were guilty of child sexual exploitation. That's a fact, and it can't be denied. I didn't assert anything beyond that fact about the entire Muslim population, and I didn't incite violence. That's why I'm not going to be arrested. Let me go a little further, just to drive the point home. Nobody will arrest me for stating that the Roman Catholic Church, and to a lesser extent the Anglican Church, has perpetrated and attempted to conceal child sexual exploitation on a massive scale, both here in UK and worldwide for many decades. That's a fact. So I'm okay to say it. I wouldn't be okay to suggest that all Roman Catholics or Anglicans are paedophiles, and I certainly wouldn't be okay to incite violence against them. So what would happen if I did? Well, if I incite violence, the state will intervene because that's an offence against the peace of the state. That's the definition of criminal, you see. An offence against the state. If I just tell lies about people, that's not criminal, and the state won't get involved. That's why we have a civil court system. Criminal acts, offences against the state, are heard in criminal courts. Civil cases, offences against the individual, are heard in civil courts. If I say something that's likely to cause harm to my neighbour, I'll be tried in a criminal court. If I say something that merely offends that person, well, they have the option to sue me in a civil court, but here's the important bit. The truth is always a defence. If it's true that the Roman Catholic and Anglican churches have a long history of paedophilia, which they've attempted to cover up in the past, then that's my defence, and it really doesn't matter how offended the Archbishop might be when I say so. So what are the principles of underlying freedom and expression? Speak the truth. Don't incite violence or discrimination. Society, the social milieu, will sort out the good ideas from the bad. The state shouldn't intervene. Opinions shouldn't be criminal unless they incite violence or discrimination, but they should be open to argument, and even ridicule, from opponents. It's okay if you offend people. That's part of living in a diverse society. More on the way that taking offence has been misrepresented will follow in a later video. Freedom of speech makes us all responsible for reacting to things that we disagree with. For example, a relative of mine advocated machine gunning refugees at Dover. He even wrote on social media that he'd quite happily be the one to do it. He also advocated the removal of Muslims from UK society and wanted them to be ostracised. So, in the spirit of freedom of speech, I reacted as part of that wider social melee and ostracised him. It's only a small gesture, one man refusing to have anything to do with another, but if we all decided to do unto the haters within the law what they would do to their victims, many of them would change their mind. But that's the real meaning of freedom of speech. It doesn't mean no consequence. It means no criminal consequence, so long as you don't incite violence or discrimination. So far, so good. But there's an element of the modern approach to freedom of expression that really should worry us all, including those of us on the left. Just because I have the right to say what I want doesn't mean that you have to publish my words on your blog or your YouTube channel. That's up to you. I can say it, but if I want to be heard by a large audience in these days of social media, I need to start my own blog. You, as your blog owner, has a final say on what you would like to be attached to your URL. That's why you won't see far-right propaganda on the Exposing Britain First site, and there's no lefty propaganda on the English Defence League site either. But what if the private individual making those editorial decisions isn't just a platform user? What if they're the platform owner instead? What if it's Facebook or Twitter or YouTube that decides to get precious about political differences? Alex Jones of InfoWars is undoubtedly a hate preacher, and many of his assertions are simply untrue, or at the very least, let's be kind, mistaken. There's very little doubt about that, so I'm more than happy to say so, exercising my right of freedom of expression. Remember, the defence is always truth, and it's easy to prove, so I'm sure I don't need to worry. But he wasn't prosecuted by the American state for hate speech or incitement, nor, to the best of my knowledge, has he been sued in a civil action. He's simply been blocked from pretty much all major social media platforms. Now, it's true that privately owned platforms like Facebook, etc., have the right to refuse almost anyone. But in this day and age, when those platforms are key to having a meaningful voice at all, it's a bit anxiety-provoking. Don't get me wrong, I don't regret the loss of InfoWars. In my opinion, it was a vile vehicle for hate-filled propaganda and incitement. But I dislike the process of its demise. We should all be uneasy about that. How simple would it be for social media platforms to silence the rest of us too? I'm Stuart Sorensen and this is Left Eye View. If you found this video at all useful, please click the little eye icon on your screen right now to subscribe, and then you won't miss any future videos. And while you're at it, like and share the video. It'll do me a great service in trying to get this little channel off the ground. Thank you very much.